I think that Daniel Ricciardo should have been given the second Red Bull seat.
Obviously, whatever they did to the car after the sprint was f***ed up.
Not Lando Norris sliding off into the distance after turn one this time. Tunda, we need to talk. I didn't expect that being a Ferrari fan will take such a toll on me. It is race 2, bear in mind. And I already want to sign the contract to quit being a Ferrari fan because this, it is painful.
Look, I don't know what you expected. All of last year, you can go through the videos. I've been telling you what it's like to be a supporter of this Italian devil team. And I'm just glad that you get to experience it right now as well. But I don't know what you mean by second race of the season, because what do you mean? Like, the season hasn't started. The season opener is in
exactly.
Suzuka.
It's just testing, I guess.
But I do like the sentiment from your side, because it's a symptom of a much larger thing. All over Twitter, I'm seeing Lewis Hamilton fans saying, "What is this? This is not the Ferrari that we signed up for."
Oh my
but it
God.
is.
This
Everybody was
is
telling
pure
you this.
pain.
And, I am ready to eat my words. Come Suzuka, come whatever. When Ferrari inevitably wins at some point. I am, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm sure that Ferrari is winning a Grand Prix this year.
Yeah.
And I mean,
so.
we saw, okay, because obviously we both know what happened with the double disqualification. First in Ferrari history, these two teammates, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, already making history. But it was Sunday.
Amazing.
The pace wasn't that bad. And let's not forget, Hamilton still won the sprint race on Saturday. His first victory with Ferrari came already during the second race, before Leclerc first this season. He was dominating that sprint. Like, it was a very mixed bag of a weekend, for Ferrari fans. Because obviously, Hamilton winning, Hamilton being on pole for the sprint. That's amazing. That's incredible. That's showing that he's, from Melbourne, really moved on with the car. Obviously, whatever they did to the car after the sprint was f***ed up.
Yeah.
But still the win is there. The win was there.
Yeah, some things never change, Last year, Mercedes with Hamilton, all the comments on the Instagram section just saying, don't change it, don't touch his car. They touched his car once again. But yeah, I guess this season is really the story of many tales. It's just sometimes you get the 2021 vibe, as for example in the sprint, Verstappen, Hamilton 1-2. Basically them two battling it out for the lead. Well, I say battling it out. Verstappen couldn't touch Hamilton after what was like the half of the sprint. But yeah, it has been an interesting weekend in China. To be honest, the race wasn't that great. The race weekend, I don't know what it is with China, but we always tend to have quite big expectations. Because, may we not forget, China does hold the record for most Grand Prix overtakes, which was over 100. I think, was it in 2016 or somewhere in that era? But this time it just seems that although the resurfacing was complemented by a lot of drivers, because the track has had nice resurfacing, so much more grip than last year, not so much sliding. Not Lando Norris sliding off into the distance after turn one this time. But it was kind of strange to see this many turnarounds. For example, as you mentioned, Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton winning the sprint, absolutely looking like the car and the driver to beat in terms of the Grand Prix, although we know McLarens are quick as hell, which was proved in the Grand Prix. But yeah, what do you actually make of the Ferrari performance compared to the McLaren, for example? Because, we had Charles Leclerc, who, bear in mind, made contact with Lewis Hamilton in lap 1, turn 1, which was a scary moment.
I completely forgot about that. And that's a thing, that's an episode in and of itself. Because this is not the first time that Charles Leclerc, got a piece of his front wing torn off and then went on to become faster.
Yeah.
And the fact that it has happened multiple times, I feel like is a show that, maybe Ferrari should just hit the car with a metal pipe a few times before sending it out on the track.
Oh my God.
Because the fact that, the fact that Leclerc was able to continue, and be fast as hell in that first stint was very, very impressive, but also so funny. I mean, obviously, I get that the fact that, it might have helped with some of the downforce a little bit, or it was more flexy or something, but still, you wouldn't expect the car with a missing end plate on the front wing to actually work properly and to be able to overtake.
Yeah, that was surprising. I think he lost about, Ferrari said 30 points of downforce, which, quick math, I don't know, I think it could be around at least 0.3 a lap in terms of pure pace. Yeah. But then not accounting for the tire deg, which definitely would have been higher, considering the coincidence that the end plate was actually the one that was missing was the left front, which, the tire that gets the most stress in the Chinese Grand Prix is the front left. So missing downforce in there. I'm surprised Leclerc wasn't actually locking up every single corner, towards the end of the Grand Prix. But yeah, reminds me of Silverstone 2022.
True. But the tire deck was another thing, because obviously things changed quite a lot from the sprint to the race. There's also the teams didn't run on hard tires before then, so they didn't really know how those would look. But then it turned out that the tire deck was overall way lower than teams expected, and a lot of the teams went for a one stop, which ended up working quite well. But I mean, obviously, some strategy errors happened here and there as well. I mean, the racing bulls once again fumbled the bag.
What a missed opportunity for them.
Yeah, exactly. But it just feels like, also Ferrari, their tires fell off so much towards the end.
Yeah,
it was Leclerc got overtaken by Verstappen, right, in the last few laps for.
Yeah, I guess this is the so-called beauty in because we had a sprint weekend, meaning
which I forgot about, by the way.
Yeah, you did. I did too. Never mind. That's so much for running an F1 podcast, huh? But anyway, you get the first practice, and then basically you go into the sprint shootout, locking in, going into Parc Fermé, and then having to not only do the sprint qualifying or the sprint shootouts with the setup, but also you're stuck with it for the sprint. But then the Parc Fermé is not in place anymore, and you can change whatever the hell you want for the Grand Prix qualifying. And it seemed like it helped Red Bull with the tire deck, because, Verstappen fell off like a rock towards the end of the race, or the sprint. Mercedes kind of in the nowhere land, I'd say. Didn't impress, didn't insult anyone. But it was just a mediocre stint for them, I guess. But yeah, for the whole Grand Prix and the qualifying, Ferrari went a step backward, at least with Hamilton. Leclerc kind of followed the direction of Hamilton, which kind of got better for him, I think. But Hamilton just, he went to his 2024 season just making car undrivable for him again. But I guess he's just living and learning, unlike somebody else who ended up 20th, not only in the sprint shootout, but also in the qualifying for the Grand Prix. And that is none other then the second driver of Red Bull Racing, Liam Lawson. What is your twin brother doing, Tonda? Just explain. What have you been telling him? Did you share some setups from F124 with him?
Well, I feel like this might be something that we have to talk about on this podcast pretty often, right? Liam Lawson struggling in the second Red Bull seat. I hope that's not the case, but we already talked about it last. The expectations, and I said, if I'm not mistaken, that he's not gonna have it easy. He's not gonna have it easy with all the pressure, confidence, breaking apart, maybe. But I also feel like that the Red Bull just must be so goddamn difficult to drive. Obviously, Albon has been saying this. Everybody has been saying this. That the car is so pointy, and one can just assume that since those days when Albon was in that car, they have only tailored it to Max more. And especially, I feel like last year, once the performance started falling off a little bit, they couldn't really afford to spend as much effort on trying to make the car as so suited for Checo. Especially for 2025, I'm pretty sure they knew their pace just isn't where it used to be. Still decent, but in that case, I mean, when you're Red Bull, are you going to put your money on just let's make it as fast as possible for Max, and so that he can do his magic with it? Yes, Lawson might suffer, but Max is gonna bring in the points. Or are you gonna be like, okay, let's make it fair and square? I think it's kind of an obvious choice, right? Because Verstappen is the one who has been dominating, or was dominating for a couple of years. He's, an amazing driver. So you're gonna put your money on him. You're gonna develop the car towards him, which obviously then is gonna hurt Lawson. But I feel like then Helmut Marko can't be, can be mad at him. Like, you built the car this way. Obviously, also with more factors, right? But still, I feel like it's, it's not his fault, but I feel like it was bound to happen. I don't know if Yuki would be doing better. Car.
That's a good question.
Could we see that? Could we see a swap in a couple of races? I mean, it's in Red Bull, in true Red Bull fashion. I wouldn't be surprised, but still.
Yeah, I mean, how bizarre! Although you clearly Red Bull is going for the option of having a very well stated number one driver, and who can fault them? If your driver is Max Verstappen, you're not gonna likely just have equal treatment between drivers unless you have a certain Alonso, Hamilton, or maybe Leclerc alongside him. But Red Bull is clearly not really interested in this philosophy, and it is quite funny because I don't recall a podcast where we wouldn't talk about the second seat of the Red Bull.
I just wanted to say last year, I don't even want to say how many episodes we spent shitting on Checo. I feel like in this latter part of the season, it was almost every other podcast that we would talk about this, because he was struggling. I mean, in Baku, he was going for the win, but then the fateful collision with Sainz happened, which also took away Ferrari's constructors championship.
True.
Anyway, I got a bit lost in my memories there. But yeah, the second, I mean, and I feel like, had we started the podcast years earlier, we would have been talking about Gasly
and Albon. Yeah, that is very true. That is very true. And it seems like the running problem of all of them, too pointy front end, lack of confidence, in the high-speed corners. Because I was just looking at the onboards of, Verstappen on his qualifying lap in Q1 and Lawson in his, qualifying lap in Q1 because he didn't get further. But it just seemed like in the high-speed corners, for example, when just Verstappen was able to kind of chuck in the car. But yeah, Lawson just didn't trust the car. And, don't get me wrong. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion. You can feel free to discuss with me, but I think that Daniel Ricciardo should have been given the second Red Bull seat. And don't get me wrong, it's because he has a proven record of, the Red Bull characteristics suiting his driving style and being able to actually cope with the car more or less on par with Verstappen, or at least 100% better than anybody who did after. And, Lawson, as good as he is, because he actually won on his debut in the Super Formula. It's only his second Grand Prix weekend. So I would find it pretty harsh to just swap him. Because, for example, Perez, he got multiple seasons despite not being really on top of his performance. But on the contrary, he never really finished last in qualifying, did he? And 2 times in a row. But, mainly Suzuka is coming up. And Lawson is very good at Suzuka, actually. I don't think he has really driven in Australia and in China before. So I think that Japan, Suzuka could be the breaking point for Lawson, because that is actually a track he drove an F1 car on.
Yeah.
So maybe that is where he rebuilds his confidence. But yeah, many sources say that he's going to be replaced by Tsunoda on the Japanese Grand Prix. Some say that Franco Colapinto would be given, would be just borrowed on loan and be signed to VCarb. So what is going on?
Franco Colapinto, the star of last year's second half, right? But yeah, I think it could be a matter of time before he gets a seat somewhere. Mid-season. But you raised a couple of good points. I feel like, Suzuka will be a breaking point for Lawson in one way or the other.
Go big or go home.
Go big or go home, because either he's going to prove to everyone, okay, it was the 2 unlucky weekends, okay, that can happen to anyone. But now I'm here. I'm in fucking Q2 at least, Q1, if the gods will it. And then he can, at least show some pace during the race day and everything. Or it's gonna be the same case as the weekends right now, and he's on the way to being kicked out probably. I do think that it would be insane. It would be insane to replace him right now. I get that Suzuka would be a cool place to promote Yuki to the Red Bull seat. But you can't do that after 2 races.
Yeah.
That would be, even if you're Helmut Marko, even if that's your style, 2 races would be chilling crazy. I mean, for Lawson, his career would then be in 20 years a very, very interesting trivia question.
Yeah. 13 races.
But going back to what you said about Daniel Ricciardo, I also think that's really interesting, because I've seen this sentiment online, that people saying, okay, well, they forgot the one driver who could drive with a pointy end. And I don't know, man. I don't know. Because obviously we all remember, or at least know, of what Daniel Ricciardo was capable in those days of 2018 and before.
Yeah, exactly.
But then it's been so long. It's been I'm not, I don't think that right now, if Daniel Ricciardo was in that Red Bull, that he would be performing like crazy, that he would be up there.
Yeah.
Because I think, he was without a doubt a good driver, and don't get me wrong, I would love to see how he would perform, but I don't think that he would, he was an obvious choice for it. Maybe, put Ricciardo in the Red Bull seat, keep Lawson in racing Bulls for a season more or something, or potentially swap him out mid-season for Hadjar. I don't know. I think that's what we also
imagine.
I think no, that's a bit insane. No, I think that's what I also thought last year, or said on one of the episodes, that I thought that Ricciardo should have gotten the seat probably, but I don't think he would be doing that much right now.
It's interesting because it's not just because Ricciardo is, I think, for many a fan favorite. He has been very loved in the paddock and maybe outside of it as well. In terms of the fans. But I don't know, like if I look at it, right, they're putting their drivers to test in the Racing Bulls car, right?
Yeah.
Which is a lot easier to drive and
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
to be on the more. If I had to put my money on it, I think it is more on the safer and understeer, way driving when you look at it. Like when you look at least the last year's car, this year's car is kind of different. And it's too early to say because the car is not that developed yet. But so then you're trying to compare a complete opposite in terms of what you need a driver to have as a skill. So that is, I don't know, like, because we have seen many times these drivers performing very well in the, let's say, junior cars of the V car, and then massively struggling in the new car. And I think for Ricciardo it could have been absolutely the opposite, because he could have been performing not so consistently and not so well last year, particularly because he was missing the front end of the Red Bull and the confidence under the brakes, because that is actually where he makes the most time. And that was his struggle at McLaren pretty much as well. So, yeah, my opinion is genuinely that he would be much better off in the Red Bull. And yeah, at this point, like, I wonder, are we going to have 5 drivers for Red Bull this year? Because if Lawson drowns, then you put in Tsunoda, who could drown as well. I can't imagine it going so much different, but maybe it will be proved wrong. Who do you, like, if Tsunoda would fail, who do you put in the car? Do you call Checo back, or like what the hell is happening?
The thing. That is the thing as well. Because actually, you might be winning me over with this. Okay, maybe Ricciardo, maybe he's not washed. Maybe this whole time he just needed to get back into that pointy car. But I think there is a structural problem at Red Bull. It's not gonna, not right now. It's not gonna show right now. Or, I mean, it's kind of showing, right? It's kind of showing already. But they have Max Verstappen. And I think having Max Verstappen, you kind of, that's all you focus on, right? That's all you need. But Max is not gonna be there forever. Like, obviously, the team has been centered around him for years now, almost, I don't know, let's say 8 years at least. And they've been developing that car for him in this direction. He won multiple drivers' championships. They won constructors' championships. But what are you going to do, once he leaves?
Because pack your bags and go home.
Because if your strategy with the car has been, okay, let's just let's make it as pointy as possible for Max, and these other drivers, and not only in terms of the car, okay, I'm not an engineer. I don't see inside of the mind of the engineer. Maybe that's not what they're doing at all. But even just in terms of the drivers, right? You're gonna have them crash and burn next to Max Verstappen, and then you're gonna fire them. Who's gonna want to join Red Bull Racing as a replacement for Max Verstappen?
I mean, then a logical point would be to just promote your V-Carb drivers, right? So,
yeah. But then if the car is undrivable, undrivable for anybody but Max Verstappen, then
put Helmut Marko in, and he's going to show everyone how to do that.
Yeah.
And nobody can actually talk smack about Helmut Marko unless, Helmut Marko talks smack about himself. A win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
Except for Formula One.
So I'm genuinely wondering, what will be the state of Red Bull Racing in, let's say, 2029? I know it's a long time. It's a long time from now, and a bunch of things might happen before then. But even next year, with the new regulations, the new engine, and everything, are they, how hard of a crash will the fall from grace be?
That's a good question, and I think I might have a scenario for you to imagine, right? Because we well remember the Ferrari Schumacher days, or at least from YouTube videos, from different eras. Maybe we just didn't see it live. We didn't, but Ferrari, it was from 1996 when Schumacher joined Ferrari, Schumacher was building this team. And the team was built around him, because he was the clear number one driver. And he really brought Ferrari to the top. And the same question could be asked because he was a 7-time world champion, because he won 5 championships in a row with Ferrari and with Rubens Barrichello, a clear number 2 driver at that time, who was in a support role of Schumacher pretty much. He was the second car in Ferrari. And the same question could be asked, if Schumacher goes away, what's going to happen? And, then they swapped Barrichello for Felipe Massa, who was a young prospect of a driver. He didn't match Schumacher, I'd say. He wasn't close to Schumacher, I'd say. But then we had a certain Kimi Räikkönen, who signed for Ferrari. So the answer to your question, Tonda, is to sign another star driver who is going to lead the team forwards. And whoever it could be Oscar Piastri, could be Lando Norris, could be George Russell, even, because many speculations have been that Verstappen would sign for Mercedes because George Russell's contract is expiring at the end of the season. So you can just imagine Russell driver swap, with
Alonso.
with Verstappen, maybe Alonso as well, because he could go to Aston Martin as well, Verstappen. So the options are infinite, Tonda.
That's actually a great point, and a pretty clear answer to my stupid question.
It's not a stupid question, but to be honest.
Maybe they just do need another master of the pointy car.
Maybe.
And I'm not sure who that might be, but we have a bunch of rookies on the grid. Kimi, Antonelli. Could another Kimi fill up the gap? Fill the void after a champion gone?
I don't think Toto Wolff is gonna let.
Well, he's already doing that.
Antonelli slipping
right now, right?
away. So,
and if anything, Antonelli is bound to end up at Ferrari at one point, right?
Yeah, I mean,
being an Italian,
the stars are gonna be aligned one day. Maybe after Hamilton finishes his stint at Ferrari, he could be. Again, the one replacing his seat.
Yeah, the Mercedes to Ferrari pipeline. But maybe, enough talk about 2029. That's far enough. But actually, I wanted to mention, because we were just talking about Red Bull, right? And Max Verstappen, Liam Lawson, this relationship between the teammates. But I feel like this weekend was actually an interesting show of, of more developments in the driver pairing. Because, for example, at Ferrari, right, we saw some team orders for the first time this year. We saw, actually, it was apparently even Hamilton who suggested to swap positions at one point because he was slower than Leclerc. And, that's, it might seem obvious, but I know that there have been some questions, some people wondering, what will it be like in this team with 2 great drivers? How will they deal with that? And, obviously, things can still go wrong, but so far they seem to have been mature about it and everything. So Ferrari seem to be doing pretty well, but that's not the interesting part, right? But McLaren, because we have not even mentioned the fact that Oscar Piastri had his first Grand Prix pole and a 3rd victory.
Yeah,
Oscar Piastri won the race. A statement, a pretty solid statement. And, and it makes me very excited because if nothing else here, if all the other teams fall off, if Lawson is stuck in Q1, if Red Bull, if Max's tires always die, if Ferrari keep getting disqualified every single single race,
not.
And if Mercedes, I don't know, if George Russell stops being as lucky as he has always been, then at least I think we might get some interesting fight at the top between the 2 McLaren drivers, because we're clearly seeing that both are capable of winning a Grand Prix, of qualifying at the front. And then it's just a matter of, okay, so which one of us is the number 1 driver?
Yeah,
It's this
that's
because we're not because McLaren have said, okay, we have to see how it pans out, right? It's the second race of the season. It's not like last year when it was clear that Lando was the one fighting for the championship. So you could argue with, okay, well, we gotta let him through. Oscar, please move away. Now it's a brand new start, the second race, and now it's 1-1 on wins. So
exactly, and it's only 10 points away in the championship. And bear in mind, Piastri had a shocker of a home race in terms of an unlucky one corner, because he drove a brilliant race in Australia, apart from that one mistake. But we know, Formula One, you're only as good as your last race. Could be only as good as your last turn at some cases.
There's a pretty real chance that Oscar...
Yeah.
There was a chance that Oscar would have been leading the champion now, and I don't think it's far-fetched that he might...
Exactly.
Who knows? Because Lando struggled in the sprint race.
Absolutely, and he couldn't put the lap together when it mattered. In the sprint and in the qualifying, he didn't beat Oscar. So, it is quite funny because I recall Lando Norris being quite vocal, in their years of, I don't know if it was 2020, 2021, 2022, where he was just bashing whoever was on top, saying, yeah, their car should win all the races, easy peasy. And if someone made a mistake, they had been saying, well, this car shouldn't be this low. They should have been P1, right? And suddenly, when the car is the fastest for him, he has been saying that the car is very hard to drive. So I think this has been a little bit humbling in terms of, so this is what it's like to actually have the fastest car. It's not only sunshine and rainbows. I actually have to put in a lot of work, and it's actually not that easy to drive. It's not a Mercedes W11 from the 2020 per se, the car on rails that was insane. But yeah, it seemed like, the Chinese bottle for Lando Norris kind of continues because he couldn't make much progress in the sprints. It was difficult to overtake, even with the McLaren who had pace advantage over other
I think
cars.
there might have been some even issues with the car, to be completely fair to Lando Norris, or at least from what I've kind of...
Well, that was in the Grand Prix, He had the issues with the brakes, but I'm not sure if he had some issues in the sprint. I think he was just overall pretty slow.
That is also true with the brakes. We can't also completely judge Lando based on this. But even still, that just because he had a problem with the brakes doesn't mean that he would have overtaken Oscar, even if they fought. So
true.
I think it's still a fair thing to say, and I'm very excited actually to see how it develops for McLaren.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. I'm really excited for this internal battle, and not to bash Norris all the time.
Yeah,
he was actually, very ballsy with his overtake on Russell. It was a pretty good overtake on the final / main straight, not main straight, the first basically start-finish straight. But yeah, a McLaren 1-2 with fastest lap after actually disqualifications of both Ferraris. So I think the gap is then 11 points. But yeah, I hope that your prediction from the preseason is going to come true, and we're going to have a battle for the championship until the last race in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, I said that. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Well, I mean, who knows? Piastri, for all we know, could be the World Drivers' Champion of 2025.
Yeah.
Entirely possible. Unless it's Charles Leclerc, or Lewis Hamilton, or Lando Norris.
So far it's been...
Max Verstappen.
It's been very difficult to believe it, but
because I'll remind you that this time, last year, McLaren were also not doing that well.
Exactly.
McLaren qualified 7th and 8th in the first race, albeit it's true they did not get disqualified from the second race, both of them.
Yeah.
So, but we saw that things can turn around really quickly, and especially in this year, when everything is coalescing in terms of the development and everything else, we're really reaching the ceiling of what's possible with these ground effect air cars.
Yeah, and we're going to have to wait and see also for the new directive in terms of the flexi wings in Barcelona, because I think that could potentially shake it up a little bit. And
Because directives
yeah,
can change a lot. I still remember the DD39 in 2022. That's why Ferrari, also Leclerc was on top of the world. Anyway, that's enough for one episode, I think, of a Ferrari cries.
We'll save it
We
for
have
later.
also not mentioned that thanks to the double disqualification, both Williams
Mm,
and Haas
mm.
scored double point. I mean, hell, Ocon was what, 5th
Yeah.
in the Haas? Herman was overtaking people left and right. I mean,
Ciao.
Ciao, exactly. Albon was saying, "Oh, I'm better than anybody else on these tires." I know. I mean, I don't remember where I placed Haas, but I said Williams could be in P5.
Mm-hmm. You did. They're ahead of.
And-
Well, they're on par with Ferrari.
So, I mean, I'm sure that Carlos Sainz is breathing a sigh of relief, seeing last year's performance. And I mean, but I'm also, he brought a lot of experience to the team. And James Vowles has also been saying that he's brought a lot of insight into strategies as well. And they seem like very solid driver pairing with Albon. So their season is shaping up to be quite nice. And Ocon is just, damn, also very, just like Russell, very lucky guy. Also, when this clip of his, the way he got to the front of the field in Hungary 2021 was going around, and with the rain and everything.
Yeah.
For his first win. Right?
But yeah, they had a good strategy call because I think they, at least Ocon one-stopped, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Behrman did, but Behrman had a fairly impressive outing in terms of the race. He was making amazing switchback overtakes. Chow 1, Chow 2, Chow 3, Chow 4. And then the, was he the one who was having problems with Doohan? No, I was Hajar? No, it was Hajar, wasn't it? Anyway.
A lot of things.
Also, speaking of Williams, Albon, very good job. But to say that Carlos Sainz finished in the points after what was he has not had a great start to the season, right? Because he has had a shocking sprint. He actually had to box. He was the only one who pitted for new tires in the sprint, which is... I don't know if that ever happened, but that's super rare.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting that he somehow managed to get in the points, of course, after the Ferrari DSQ. And also, don't forget, after Gasly being disqualified, who was actually in P11. Had it not been actually for his disqualification, Alpine would have had their first points. And that would be actually... that would be crazy because all the teams would then have scored points
after
two races, which is, just again puts a gigantic tick on our box saying, yes, this is going to be a very equal season in terms of the pace. And we could see it in qualifying. I mean, fine margins.
Hell, even Sauber.
Yeah.
I mean, both Hülkenberg and Bortoleto had a pretty unfortunate Grand Prix. Losing a bunch of positions at the start, but still, given what a tractor the car was last year, I mean, I'm sure they're having a better time than Valtteri and Joe were last year. So
yeah, definitely. And also, Williams equaled, or I think surpassed, the amount of points in their second race weekend for what they had the whole last year. So
yeah.
The stats have been crazy.
And if you remember, also Williams last year, it was a lot of Logan Sargent was still at the team. And chassis were getting broken left and right. In Australia, nevertheless, they had one car, they have to get to give the car to Albon. So they've come a long way. They've come a long way. I mean, unless Sainz and Albon start destroying the car, I feel like Williams are on a good way to be contenders. I mean, Aston Martin are also Alonso very unlucky few races, and Stroll, he's
bagging the points,
bagging the points, getting them where he can.
Incredible. But he actually drove a solid race because I think he started on the hard tires and his pace was solid because even after what was like, I don't know, 30 laps almost on the hards, he was still not caught by the train behind him. It wasn't like he was parking the bus and then just disappearing into nowhere after pitting. He actually came back. So yeah, it was maybe the Stroll World Champion 2026 plan is coming alive. Who knows?
Yeah.
With Adrian Newey coming, because this
With
car
Adrian Newey?
desperately needs him as well, I'd say, because just didn't seem... It just seems like Aston Martin is kind of dropping like a rock in the water, because, Alonso not being really able to extract much from the car and having brake issues. I think even his mood says it all, just telling the reporters, I have nothing to say to you. It's every Friday the same thing. You can ask me whatever the hell you want, and I'm just going to answer whatever the hell you want to hear, because we don't know.
Yeah.
Quite the frustration.
Quite a frustration for a lot of teams, but will we be frustrated when we talk about our predictions from last week?
Very much so.
I actually got it. I mean, I said it, we'll see a Ferrari on the podium. I did not specify which podium. And
well, that is actually very true.
Lewis did win. I mean, that's as podium as you can get in my eyes. So I think, obviously, let's not talk about the Grand Prix in terms of that, but I feel like I got it. I believed in them. What about your prediction, though?
I think we can skip. Go over. Well, look, I predicted that a Red Bull won't be in the top 5. Let me be clear. It was very close. Yet so far.
Yeah.
Verstappen finished 4th. I think that was his worst result, albeit, in the sprint qualifying, he was 2nd. In the qualifying, he was 4th. In the sprint, he was 3rd, was he? And in the race, he was 4th. So, that is a big fat 0 for me, for the predictions. So, yes, I am a little bit frustrated. And it looked on course of being true, because it seemed like the Ferrari had the better pace from the start of the race, but it would have accounted for nothing because they got disqualified anyway. Hamilton got disqualified for the plank wear, which as we know, I think they randomize completely the pick in terms of who gets picked for the plank wear, for the plank wear check, and Charles Leclerc's car was actually underweight by over a kilo.
No kidding. When a piece of it is missing, I guess that doesn't help.
Well, actually, when you're in Parc Fermé, after the race, you're allowed to change the front wing if you have damage. So, and I think they found that the front wing was 0.2 kilograms heavier, the new wing, than the broken one. So even despite the front wing change, he was over a kilo underweight. Which, that's just bad.
That's what you get for one stop. Yeah, the fact that they got disqualified for different reasons, even, it's incredible. But
that shouts Belgium 2024.
Yeah.
At least Leclerc didn't win.
True.
That would hurt.
But I think it's also time to talk about the driver of the weekend.
So, driver of the weekend. Tonda, who is your basically top team driver of the weekend?
Yeah, it's very difficult because it was all up and down for everyone. But overall, when we look at when I look at it, averaged out over the sessions, I think Oscar Piastri. He was driving very pretty damn solidly. This weekend, nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
What about yours?
I think I'm gonna actually, yeah, I agree. Oscar Piastri, incredible job. But maybe an unpopular opinion, but I'm gonna say George Russell because I don't know, I feel like he maximized the car.
Yeah.
And yeah, there wasn't, he qualified P2, let's not forget.
True.
Even, he was like, what, 800ths away from pole time of Piastri in a McLaren, which, you know, I think that's a no mean feat. He had a back-to-back podium. So yeah, but I'd say Oscar Piastri, winning the race, it's hard to dispute that. But I think George Russell with the car he had, I just think he did the most he could. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair
and
enough.
What about your bottom field driver of the day?
That's that's a good question.
Or of the weekend.
Yeah,
Not
of
of
the
the day,
weekend, of the
but
day.
of the weekend.
I mean, obviously, we saw some strong performances in all of the sessions. I mean, Hajar qualifying really well in the Racing Bull, out qualifying, you know that. Andrea Kimi Antonelli also, very solid performance, just like last weekend. But
yeah,
I mean, I like the line. I like his his catchphrase when overtaking. So I'm gonna say Ollie Behrman. Second race into Haas, doing a good job. Performing, grabbing some points.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Because he's a rookie. Let's not forget again, right? Only a few races under the belt, and amazing overtakes. But I would probably, at this point, I'm not sure if it counts as a bottom field, but I guess we count bottom field anything bar Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say Alex Albon.
Because the other option I was.
Yeah. I genuinely also think that he maybe should have had the driver of the weekend tag last weekend in Australia. Because he did a phenomenal job of holding Hamilton back and actually finishing P5, which was incredible. But I think in this weekend also, it was a lot about tire management. He actually, kind of figured his own strategy as well, saying that these tires are going to last. He figured it out quite, in a early on in the stage of the race. So I think that he would be my pick for the driver of the day driver of the weekend in terms of the bottom field. But let me remind you of something very bizarre. Driver of the day was Kimi Antonelli. I am a fan at this point of Kimi Antonelli. I really, really like his driving style. But don't get me wrong. I don't think he actually was supposed to be a driver of the day. What is your opinion? Yeah, and he actually carried some damage, floor damage, that was found out after the race. So,
I mean, we could do a very quick turnaround after last weekend when we said, oh, we love this guy, he's the next big thing, and now we're gonna be like, oh, overrated. No, but I mean, yeah, I think could have been somebody else, but still, I mean, it was not egregious. From P8, I mean, I wanted to say to P6, but it was after his qualifications. I mean, it was not an offensive race from him, so I mean, doing what he should. Driver of the day, probably not, but it's not insane to say.
I mean, they didn't bin it, Let's not forget 2 race weekends and he didn't crash, which is pretty good.
Out of the rookies, I mean, he's been, been having
impressive.
the better time than most, I would say. But
he just needs time to adapt.
The biggest winner of the Chinese Grand Prix. Who would you pick?
I would pick Haas. Because, the biggest winners from Chinese Grand Prix are Haas. Because when you look at Australia, we just thought that probably Haas could be plumb last in terms of the performance. And it would be difficult for them to achieve reasonable point scoring anytime soon. But, Esteban Ocon finished P5. Of course, if we don't take into consideration the two Ferraris being disqualified, you'd still be looking at P7, which, in my opinion, it's still very impressive, for a good strategy. The car didn't seem that far off as well. The qualifying performance was fairly good, at least in hands of Ocon as well. So, my winners would be Haas, because it would have been, for me, I think it's pretty unexpected, and they bagged a lot of points. Who would be your Chinese Grand Prix biggest winner or biggest winners?
That's a good question.
Liam Lawson.
Liam Lawson. Probably not Liam Lawson. I mean, I would, in a similar fashion, obviously Haas is a good pick. I agree with that. But I would even say, we've been praising them a lot, but Williams. Williams overall because obviously, Science, they get lucky with the disqualification. But I think a lot of people, just as we thought that Haas was plumb last, we thought, some, or at least some thought, okay, Williams, this track just kind of suited them. Just like we've seen at a couple of other tracks in the last few years. But, it's kind of proved that they are capable of actually being up there across different tracks. Especially Albon. Sainz is still getting into the rhythm with the car, but as I feel like this gives them a good, really a good overview or some hope for this. But for the biggest loser or biggest losers, who's on your mind?
It's very difficult to say. However, I'm really torn between two options.
Yep.
But I'm actually going to say it's Alpine. They're the only team that didn't score yet. They are Pierre Gasly, for the second weekend in a row, has ended up on track P11. Although this time he got disqualified. But, also very unlucky, because if the two Ferraris had been disqualified, they would actually be in the points. Jack Doohan receiving a 10-second penalty for just driving someone off. I can't recall who it was right now, but it was either Hajar or Behrman. But it was not a great weekend for Alpine, albeit either it was the pace that sucked, or it was the racing, or it was the actual result. So I think they have a lot of work to do, and it also showed their big weakness, which was the engine. They didn't get so much top speed. They had to they would have to always balance between a little bit more stable rear end and the downforce, or being faster on the straight and, then kind of losing out on the drivability of the car. So that's my biggest loser of the Chinese Grand Prix, Alpine. Who would you go for as the biggest loser or the biggest losers?
I mean, I might go with, we've been talking about this. We talked about this today. And it might be controversial, but I think Red Bull as a whole. Red Bull as a whole, in the terms of, first of all, the car is not there. Yes, Max is still all there. But regardless of, Lawson is either struggling or is just bad, But that's still, regardless of which case that is, you still have a problem on your hand. Either the car is really not ideal, or you have to deal with a driver that's underperforming. And I think it just doesn't really bode well for, the outlook that Red Bull has, their future. Yeah, I agree.
Very true. And to be honest, I was very torn between the biggest loser being also Liam Lawson himself and Red Bull as well.
I was thinking to just say Liam Lawson, but I think it's more, again, it's more of a structural thing at Red Bull.
Very true. Yeah, they lost out on Adrian Newey, and it seems like last year's prediction of ours that they're going into shambles was very correct.
Around this time last year. But before we rate this Grand Prix out of 10, we still also shouldn't forget to give our bold predictions for the Japanese Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. So what do you think will be the shocking twist of events in Suzuka.
The absolute shocker I'm going to predict, and prepare yourself. Alpine will score points.
Alpine will score points.
So therefore, we will have all constructors scoring points.
I'm ready to hear some silly statistics about this.
Yeah.
When it comes to be.
What will be your prediction, Tonda? Some ballsy, big old prediction that you're just going to lick the stamp and send it. In the words of Daniel Ricciardo, the former Red Bull driver.
Well, my bold prediction. Well, I think I'm gonna say that Racing Bulls. Racing Bulls are hopefully gonna get their shit together for Yuki Tsunoda's home race, and that Yuki Tsunoda will end up in the top 8.
All right, that is. Well, is he gonna finish ahead of Liam Lawson?
Is he? Well, who knows? And with that, I mean, I have to say one more thing about Ferrari. Did you hear that Charles Leclerc would have overtaken Sebastian Vettel as the all-time highest scorer for Ferrari, if not for this qualification? Which means that he became the top point scorer for Ferrari for a little bit, and then Vettel overtook him again, basically.
Really?
So Vettel,
crazy.
in his retirement, is still out there breaking records. And with that, on that beautiful, beautiful statistic, I think it's time to end this episode with a ranking. So what would you rate the Chinese Grand Prix out of 10?
Oh God, it's a difficult one, because if I was to rank the whole weekend, I'd probably give it a 6.
Yeah.
Because, the qualifying sessions were quite exciting, I think, because the margins were low and very small. The sprint was all right. There were some overtakes. The Grand Prix itself, nothing much happened. There were some action points, but in the end, I think if it's going to end up being a one-stop, it's never really set up to be the biggest banger. So something to think about for the FIA for the next year. But what would you rate the Chinese Grand Prix out of 10?
I mean, again, these standards are all crooked since last year and the amazing races that we had. But I would, 5 being the average, the middle, I would say 4 is about as high as I can go. So with an average of 5, this really was just an average Grand Prix with
I agree.
a lot of things happening. But let's hope that the next Grand Prix, the Japanese one, will bring some more excitement and some more joy to the Tifosi, including us or including you, dear viewers.
Yeah, we need some good news, some positive energy, because the Hamilton, let's end up on a good note. There is pace in the Ferrari car somewhere. They just need to find it and hope they didn't, throw the keys away. They forgot maybe where they hid it. But a good thing is that Hamilton is not washed in qualifying, because he out-qualified Charles Leclerc. He is actually leading the qualifying head-to-head. Right now, it's 2-1.
It is very.
Hamilton is not washed when it comes to qualifying, and he won the sprint, making it the debut win for Ferrari, although not being a full
let's keep the hopes up until the first triple header.
Oh man, but that's a Leclerc specialty.
So stay tuned for the next episode of the Final Straight podcast, where we will talk about the tragedies and the wins of the Japanese Grand Prix.
The ups and downs of being a Ferrari fan, and maybe ups and downs of being a Formula 1 fan overall. Let's hope the Japanese Grand Prix delivers, and thanks for watching, and we will see you after the Japanese Grand Prix. Bye.